All right. Good evening, everyone. It looks like we still got a couple people coming in here, but welcome. I do show that it is 6 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, I'm going to do what I normally do. I'm going to share the calendar here. Give me 1 second. We will share. Maybe I will share. There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about our agenda for this evening. Like I said, a couple more people coming in, it looks like here. All right, I'm going to scroll down to today's date, which is 9/16. And so our plan for tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about writing a good narrative essay. We're going to first review the assignment sheet, make sure that we answer any questions that might be out there about the literacy narrative essay in general. We will go over the scoring guide in depth so you know how your paper will be evaluated. I am going to have you do a little reading, a little note taking about how to write a narrative essay, kind of some tips and tricks. We'll talk a little bit about formatting dialogue. That way, hopefully you feel comfortable using some dialogue in your literacy narrative essay. And then just have a Google Doc there that we're going to read. I feel like that's a really strong passage of showing and not telling. I also feel like it's a really strong passage of creating a very vivid introduction that makes the reader want to keep reading. And so that selection from Malibu Rising, I think you'll really like when we get to that. Then we're going to do a little sharing of your first 2 pages that you have written for tonight. Get a little peer feedback, a little one-on-one feedback there with that. And then you'll have some time to work on your essay in class. And my hopes and dreams are that we can get a lot of that knocked out tonight so you don't have so much to do the rest of the week, okay? Hold on, let me let these folks in from the waiting room. Sorry. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and jump in here just by kind of reviewing the assignment sheet. So bear with me. Sorry, my dog has a squeaker toy. Let me get that from him. So you're not hearing him squeak the whole time. He's just going to go get another one. Okay. Anyway, all right. So the literacy narrative unit, again, we're talking here about literacy, reading and writing, but also expanding that definition to perhaps maybe even social media or learning to read or do something in a new context. One of the samples that we read as part of this chapter was about cars and mechanics. I thought that one was super interesting. So I'm going to scroll down here just to kind of remind you some of the things about the literacy narrative that I have highlighted here. It says you'll be following the writing process to create a narrative essay that reflects upon your early literacy experiences and how they have shaped you into the reader and writer you are today. A highly successful essay will include an author's note, which we'll talk about later, vivid accounts of literacy experiences, critical reflection on the effects of those experiences, insightful references to outside sources. If you're going to use sources, we have to make sure we cite those. Logical and effective organizational structure, sophisticated word choice and sentence structure, strong command of spelling, grammar, and punctuation. And obviously, we want it to be an MLA format, which is size 12 times New Roman font, including the 4-line heading, pagination with your last name and page number, a creative title, double spaced. Okay. All right. And so now some of the questions that perhaps you are exploring in your literacy narrative are these guiding questions down below. What are some of your earliest memories of reading and writing? Which people have most influenced your literacy? What specific classes, books, or assignments have been crucial to your literacy development? What factors have influenced the language you use and your attitudes about language? Again, thinking about Vershawn Ashanti Young there, I don't know, it really sticks out to me. How is your speaking language different from the language you use to write, and why is it different? How has your understanding of reading and writing changed over time? What do you believe is the role of the government or other institutions in fostering student literacy development? How has media, including movies, television, the internet, and social media, affected your reading and writing skills? What kinds of ideas and attitudes do you bring to English class, and where do those ideas come from? And how will you use your positive attitude about reading and writing to help you in college? Or how will you overcome your negative attitude about reading and writing as you move more into your collegiate career? So that's the assignment sheet. That's just a recap. Okay, the only reason I was doing that, just to recap, make it fresh. Now let's talk about the scoring guide. And the scoring guide is linked here for easy access for you to come back to. I strongly encourage you, as you are finishing your essay tonight or later this week, strongly encourage you to come back and make sure that you are looking at the scoring guide, that you're feeling good about each of the categories. I always tell students, when you get your paper back, you really shouldn't be shocked, right? You have the grading instrument that you can use. You can go through and try to make sure that you've got everything you need. You can even take the scoring guide to the Writing Center on campus, or you can email it to them and they will use the scoring guide to give you specific feedback, right? There are so many tools available to us. So make sure that you ground all of your feedback here in this particular scoring guide. So when we are looking at your narrative essay, the first thing that we're going to look at is going to be your thesis statement or your central idea. Okay, essentially, what is your story going to be about? And I put here, it should be imaginative and thoughtful, neither too broad nor too narrow. So we don't want to talk about, all of your literacy experiences from the time you were 3 until now, right? We want to focus in on one specific story or one specific incident that you can tell a story about, right? And we want to sustain that throughout the entire assignment. Okay. And usually the thesis comes at the end of the first paragraph. And usually it's a sentence in a narrative that's going to kind of explain what the rest of the paper is about. I will say, though, in a narrative, though, you can sometimes move the thesis around and it can come a little bit later, especially if you're using that first paragraph or two as an attention-getting paragraph. It's pretty common to see the thesis come in the second, third, or even fourth paragraph with narrative writing. Then organization, right? Does the story make sense? Okay, and when you think about it, when you're telling a narrative or a story, it usually follows a clear pattern, right? Where you have like an introduction, you have some rising action, climax, falling action, conclusion. Sometimes you can manipulate that a little bit, but usually that's the pattern it follows. So we want to make sure that all sections of the essay are logically and coherently related to the thesis through an organizational strategy. Sound principles of critical thinking are used throughout. Effective transitions, right? Tell us the story from beginning to end. The introduction and conclusion are particularly effective, right? So with narrative writing, you got to hook the reader first and you got to end strong, right? Those are the two things people are going to remember the most about your paper. Then development says there's a convincing amount of evidence for the main points. The development using concrete details is original and thoughtful. Style. This is something we work on after we have a completed draft. And that's going back and making sure that our sentences are clear, they're fluent. When we talk about fluency, easy to read. So a good practice to get into is reading your paper out loud. Usually when you stumble, right, there's something that's not written correctly, or you'll notice you start to read and it's like the same pattern, short, choppy sentences. It's a good indicator we need to go back and do some revising too. It says the active voice is used effectively. The tone is consistent and suitable for the topic and audience. And if you keep scrolling, there's 2 more on the next page. I want to point out on this top page, though, these items are worth 8. So that's the focus. The focus is on your main idea, your organization, how well you develop and support those ideas in your style. But grammar is also going to come into play. It's worth 4 points, so not as much as those other categories. And then integration and documentation of sources. If you do bring in any sources, we have to make sure that we have an in-text citation and that we have a works cited page for those particular sources. So total points possible here, 40. That's a lot. Our reader responses are worth 16. So we know that this is a lengthy assignment that is going to require a little bit more time. And so that's why it is the point value that it is. Okay. All right, I've covered a lot there. Just kind of a recap of what the literacy narrative essay is. We've gone through the scoring guide. Now I want to get to how to write a narrative essay. This particular link is not super long, but what I'm going to give you here, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to read through this document, and I want you to jot down some notes, some things that stand out to you. And I'm hoping on your computer that you can watch some of the videos that are embedded. Like this one, what is the story? Some of them don't work. At least that's what happened to me the other day when I was trying to do this with students at Lee Summit West. Yeah, so some of the videos are blocked out, but the videos that are embedded that you can watch, try to watch them because they are super good. Again, not a super long piece, but I think that it talks about all the big things that we need to know or reminders that we need going into this particular assignment. So go ahead and watch that video. What is the story once you get to that? Okay. So as you are reading this article, I want you to take notes. I just got rid of it. So let me get the link for you. So I'm going to put this in the chat. Let me stop sharing my screen. Well, maybe I'll stop sharing. Hold on. Okay. I'm going to put that in the chat for you. Okay, so here's the link to the article. So we're going to read the article and take notes. Watch the video if you can. Okay, and it's not super long, so let's meet back here. Let's meet back here at 6:30 to chat about that article. And I'm hoping that you, like I said there, that you can watch that video and we'll kind of do some sharing now. Okay, so take notes over how to write a narrative essay step by step. Then watch the video if you can, and we'll meet back here at 6:30 ready to discuss. Okay. All right, my friends. Hopefully that gave you plenty of time to read the article about how to write a good narrative essay. And I'm hoping you were able to get that video to play. There were supposed to be two videos in there, but one of mine was blocked out and I couldn't watch it either. So I'm just going to do kind of a quick review here of that particular piece. I do feel like it does a good job of kind of recapping how to go about writing a narrative essay. I do feel like the chapter, though, that we covered earlier is probably a little bit more in depth as far as giving you like templates and things to follow. But I do think this article does a quick job of recapping for us. Let me share this tab here. Some of the important things to think about when going about writing a narrative essay. It does spend a little bit of time talking about a prompt, and in a way, we kind of do have a prompt, right? You're answering one of those unit guiding questions and talking about a time in your literacy development, that has shaped you, or, for the better or worse, or you're talking about language. And so in a way, I guess you kind of do have a prompt. Again, I was hoping you would get to watch that video there. It's kind of cool. Just to bring, bring it to your attention that you are telling a story, right? And so it's not going to be an analytical essay like here's this experience and like you're analyzing the experience. You're actually telling the story to make us feel like we are there with you, right? We're going through the same thing that you were experiencing. Again, not analyzing the situation, but telling us a story about something about literacy in your life. So I'm going to kind of scroll down here. I did like how it talked about what makes a good narrative essay. That you can write a good narrative essay about anything. And in our case, it's going to be literacy. But I love how it says passion. Passion is the number one motivator for effective narrative essays. And so you want to find a story about your literacy development that you're passionate about, right? Something that is a good story to you is going to be a good story to the rest of us. And so be thinking about, again, not focusing on, like 10 different experiences and you're trying to cram it all into one paper, but really focusing on one particular moment and really telling that story. I think I mentioned this last class that probably one of the best essays I ever read. You're going to kind of laugh. But it was about this student's first experience at a book fair, right? And just the way that she was able to use language to describe like the big buildup, right? Like the list went home in advance. They knew the book fair was coming, right? She gets to school and she's forgotten her money, and like it's this whole like storyline about the buildup, and then she got to go back on the second day, and she got to get the books she wanted. She also got to get the little knickknacks, that they have there, and so again, that's just one small moment, right, of her entire literacy life, as I would call it. Again, so focusing on one key thing or one key story and really developing it and making it into a good story that people want to read. Okay. And then for me, my essay here was blocked, or mine was blocked. I don't know if you guys were able to get it to play, but I couldn't ever get that to play. But that is a great video if any of you were able to get it to play. Okay, then I'm going to come down to the structure of the narrative essay. Again, this one just kind of emphasizes, right, a clear beginning, middle, and shows personal growth. Conclusion paragraphs usually work best when the writer stays within the comfort of the actual story, right? And so just making sure that we have the body paragraphs that are building that action. We're also going to talk a little bit about dialogue here in just a second. So again, just a recap article. I still think though, and I'm going to go back to it and stop sharing this and share my other screen here. I do want to emphasize to you, if you get stuck at all during this process, if you go back to the calendar, oh, sorry, my computer is so slow. If you go back to the calendar to chapter 10 on the literacy narrative, so this particular chapter is specific to what you are writing. So I feel like this particular chapter, though, is going to be your best bet. Yes, it's longer than the article, but it has sample essays. It talks about how, I'm going to come down, sorry, bear with me as I scroll all the way to the bottom. The inside, it's got all these sample essays that you can read. And then here it talks about the whole process, how to choose a good topic, considering the rhetorical situation, who's going to be reading it, generating your ideas, starting the rough draft, thinking about the people. Who are the people in your story? What happened in your story, right? What's the main event or the climax? Consider the significance, right? You went through this big literacy moment. Why is that important? How has it impacted your overall literacy development? But my favorite part in this whole chapter that I'm going to keep coming back to is how you can structure your narrative. Are you someone who is going chronologically from beginning to end, right? Introducing the story, describing the setting and people, telling what happened, saying how the story was resolved, and say something about the significance? Or are you going to choose one of these other methods where you kind of manipulate that structure? But if you follow any of these, right, you're going to have all of the big parts of a literacy narrative, right? The part that I most often see students forget is this part right here. Say something about the significance. So don't forget that, right? You've told this beautiful story about something you've experienced with literacy. Then at the end, come back and make sure you tell us, okay, well, how has that influenced you to date, right? Like, so now that you are the age that you are, how did that particular experience help shape you into the reader, writer, thinker, or person that you are today? Okay, so again, just want to show you that that's linked on the calendar. It's such a good resource for you to come back to throughout this process. Now I'm going to scroll back to today's date, and I'm going to talk about dialogue. Some of you, when I go through this, you're going to be like, yes, I can definitely use dialogue in my paper. Others of you may shy away from it. That's okay. I do want to encourage you, though, to think about using dialogue, because dialogue can do so much for a narrative type of writing. So, for example, anytime you open a book of some kind, you are going to see dialogue where people are talking back and forth. Okay, die means two, right? And so, like you see here, two people talking back and forth, not just one person saying something. Okay, and so we need to talk about, what does dialogue actually do? Well, if you have two people talking back and forth in your essay, it's going to create vivid characters. It can advance the plot without, being, the omniscient narrator, where, the all-knowing narrator. It can offer information. When two people are talking, we gain a lot of knowledge about them. Dialogue also engages the reader, right? But how do we go about formatting dialogue? If you're going to use dialogue, you got to format it correctly. Okay, so we place spoken words in quotation marks. I think everybody knows that part. We separate unspoken words from spoken words with commas. So-and-so said, comma, then we go into the quote. So-and-so argued, comma, then we go into the quote, right? So we separate those unspoken words with a comma. We place punctuation marks inside of the quotation marks. That is with dialogue, not with MLA format. With a research paper would be different. Okay, but with dialogue, punctuation goes inside of the quote, and you start a new paragraph every time the speaker switches. That's the big thing. So when you open up, and I don't happen to have one close to me, open up any book. Anytime two characters switch who's talking, you're going to see a new paragraph, right? You're going to see that indented over. Okay, so here I've just given you an example of what that looks like. Okay, it says, glancing behind him, Josh whispered, comma, we've got to go. And notice here the comma after whispered. Okay, and this goes into the spoken part, periods inside of the quotation mark here. Now we're switching speakers. So we enter down and tab over. I'm not finished, comma. Justine snapped as she slowly raised a spoonful of whipped cream. New speaker, so we enter, tab over. Do what you'd like, comma. Josh said as he stood, but either we leave now or we leave after we wash dishes for the next 3 hours. Okay, and so again, just showing you how the punctuation should look here. And again, anytime we switch speakers, okay, we are entering down and tabbing over. But again, this conversation here between them tells me a lot more than if you were to just write this in regular paragraph format, just telling me what's happening. Right here, I get to infer, I get to figure out, right? Josh is like, oh, we got to get out of here, right? Like, otherwise we're going to be stuck, so instead of just saying they would have been stuck for 3 hours, this adds to the overall narrative, right? It gives it a little more character. We learn more about the people that are doing the talking. So I definitely think that it has a place. So let's talk about some considerations with dialogue, though. We have to vary the taglines. Every time you introduce a speaker, don't always say, so-and-so said, so-and-so said, so-and-so said. No, we've got to vary the taglines, and we have to vary where we put them. We don't always want to have them at the beginning of the sentence. Sometimes we can use taglines as interrupters in the middle, and sometimes we can use them at the end. I put here, this one's a pretty big one. Use synonyms for said, but don't overdo it. Okay, and if we don't have to have taglines, we'll get rid of them altogether and just have the dialogue. Now, this one I put on here, use natural speech. So when we are talking with somebody, right, we are not using formal English all the time. You know, when you're talking to somebody, you're using contractions, you're using fillers. But I did put here, don't overdo it. You know, the truth often remains unspoken. And I've given you an example here. But, you know, a lot of times when we're talking, you hear me, I just said, right? So it's like that natural rhythmic speech that we use. So here I put again using subtext, the truth often remains unspoken. And then I've given you an example. She fought back tears and replied, comma, you really hurt me. I thought you loved my lasagna, and now you're telling me you don't. Now I lack the confidence to cook for you. I put there, wow, that's a lot. I don't know if somebody would actually really say that. But here's a revised version, much shorter, and I would say much punchier. See if you agree. She blinked. Silence. Oh, we should have ordered pizza, right? You can definitely tell the tone, the mood, right? Instead of having all of this, we brought it down to this. We've added some suspense, we've made it shorter, and we've kind of brought in, you know, her, I guess, like her physical reaction, right? And, you know, blinking, the silence, and the we should have ordered pizza. Okay. Okay. Here are some other things I want you to think about when you're using dialogue. I always, always, always encourage students to read every paper out loud, especially if your paper has dialogue. Okay. Are all the spoken words necessary? Do the taglines actually add to the conversation, or can we get rid of them? Okay. Like this one. He turned to look at her, shrugged his shoulders, and said, actually, this is up to you. I think it's you who has to make a decision here, one way or another. It's your choice, really. I'm like, oh my gosh, we could totally cut this conversation way down and we could just say, he shrugged. Your choice. Right? Same thing, much punchier, much shorter. The attention getters much stronger instead of having to say all of that stuff up there. All right. So again, a little bit about dialogue, and I'm going to leave these notes on the calendar. I encourage you to use it, okay, for these reasons right here. It creates vivid characters, it advances your plot, it offers information, and it's more engaging for the reader. Now, having said that, dialogue is not required. I just feel like, though, if you're writing really good narrative writing, I feel like dialogue can benefit, or your essay can benefit from having some dialogue. Not a requirement. So if you are afraid of it, you're like, oh, I don't know how to punctuate it, I just don't want to mess with it. You don't have to, but I do think it serves a really strong purpose in narrative writing. So that's something I would encourage you to take a look at. Okay. Whew, I'm out of breath today. All right. The next thing I want to show you here is this document. I'm going to put this in the chat here in a second. It's super short. Okay. It's not long, but I have a piece here from a book that I read quite a few years ago, I think probably 2 years ago, called Malibu Rising. And what this does, it's the first couple of pages of a book, but I want you to think about how this particular author goes about getting the reader's attention, makes us want to keep reading, sets the setting of the particular story. So let me put this in the chat. Right. So the author gets our attention. Think about setting, description. Ooh, if I could spell. Okay. All right, so it's only like 2 pages, so I'm not going to give you a super long time here, but I want you to give it a read. Again, the first like 3 or 4 pages here to this book, Malibu Rising, I want you to think about, how does the writer get our attention? Very good, right? This is excellent writing. Think about how the setting is described. Think about how you could apply that to some of your writing. And then would you keep reading this book after you've read this? So we're only going to take about 5 or 6 minutes here, not super long. I am going to mute here just for a second and turn off my camera. I'm going to read it as well. But so let's come back at 7. Okay. So about 6 minutes from now. Okay. Okay, help me out. Does anybody need a little bit more time? I know I put 7 on there, but I think everybody good? Okay, so now I'll go ahead and bring us all back here, and we'll do a little discussion. I love this little introductory piece here to this book. I think it's beautiful for several reasons. Let me share my screen here. Sorry, I think I'm getting a cold. You have to excuse me. I sound awful. Okay, so a couple things here. A lot of times you will hear English teachers say, show, don't tell, especially in narrative writing, where we try to use a lot of vivid details and descriptions, especially with setting and character, right? People. So as you're telling your literacy narrative, we want to make sure that we're really building in those details. What I like about this particular piece, though, I really like the thesis statement. And here's an example of a narrative piece where the thesis statement does not come at the end of the first paragraph, doesn't come at the end of the second paragraph, or even third paragraph. It came at the very end of the first like 3 or 4 pages of this text. And so a thesis for a narrative essay looks a little bit different. It's going to transition us from some kind of an attention getter into what the rest of the paper is going to be about. So here it says, because just as it is in Malibu's nature to burn, so was it in one particular person's nature to set fire and walk away. Right. So we have this transition from, okay, well, it's been talking about the history of Malibu and how many times it's burned and why it's burned. But now we're going to transition right into this party that Nina's at, and how it gets out of control, at 28150 Cliffside Drive. And it's got the date there. But this last sentence here is what we would call the thesis statement, right? This is what the rest of this particular narrative is going to be about. It's going to be about this one person setting a fire in Malibu, walking away and watching everything burn. And so I just wanted to use this for several reasons. First off, show, don't tell. Very good example of lots of description, lots of detail. But I really like the thesis statement. Again, it transitions us from all this background about Malibu and how Malibu is so prone to catching on fire, and then how it transitions into the story here about Nina Riva, right? And this big party, and how Malibu's nature to burn, so is it in one particular person's nature, set fire and just walk away. And so what a great introductory piece. I strongly encourage you to really think about, okay, at the beginning of my story, how can I really, really, really draw the reader in with a lot of action or a lot of detail, either detail with the setting, the characters. Those things are going to be super important in narrative writing. And then I want you to think about, how are you going to transition from then establishing your attention getter to what the rest of your paper is going to be about. And that's where the thesis statement will come into play. Okay. All right. I've been talking, I feel like, a whole lot today. Maybe because I feel like I'm getting kind of a cold, but all right. So the next thing I want to do, sorry, I'm getting back to my calendar here. All right. Next thing on the agenda is where I want you to do a little work with your own paper here. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of, I don't want to call it editing work because that's not really what it is, but I want you to do a little bit of identification with your own paper. So here in just a second, I'm going to have you, and you can minimize me, totally fine. But I want you to go ahead and pull up your draft. And I'm going to put these directions in the chat too. But I want you to highlight places where you have really good details or descriptions. Okay. Highlight places where you have really good details, descriptions, and then make a comment or a note on places where you want to go back and add details or descriptions. Okay, so I want you to, again, I'm only going to give you probably 2 or 3. I'm not going to give you a lot of time here. But I want you to go ahead, like I said, pull up your draft. So minimize me or minimize the Zoom. Pull up your draft. I'm going to give you a little bit of time here. I want you to read what you've got. I know sometimes that's painful. I get that. I empathize. But I want you to read what you've got so far. And then I want you to go back. I want you to highlight places where you're like, yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. Good details, good descriptions, loving it. Or if there are some spots where you're like, man, I probably really need to, after reading the Malibu Rising piece, I really need to go back and step it up here and here and here. But I need to give you a little time to do that. So let's take about 5 or 6 minutes here and then I'll call us back. But again, I want you to read what you've got so far. Okay, feel free to make any changes if you can't resist. But then I want you to use the highlighting function on your computer. And I want you to highlight where you feel like you have really good details and descriptions. And I want you to make notes where you feel like you can go back and add more or better details and descriptions. Okay, so take about 5 minutes and then we're going to come back. All right, my friends, I know that I may not have given some of you enough time to go through and truly get in and start making comments and editing and adding more description and detail. But I'm hoping you were able to go ahead and identify some strong writing elements within your own paper where you saw a lot of good details and descriptions. You might have also commented on some places where you want to go back and add a little more detail, a little bit more description, and that's fine too, right? And so again, knowing that we only have two of the well, some of you may have more, but right, the assignment for today was to have two full pages of your rough draft typed, and you're going to obviously have another 2 pages coming up. But before we do that, I do want to give you an opportunity to get some feedback from some colleagues, and with your initial ideas, kind of, even if you're still in the planning phase, like sharing what you have written so far, even if you think it's no good, right? That's part of being vulnerable. Yes, but it's also part of getting good feedback. And that's how we become better writers when somebody else sees what we wrote and can give us tips and feedback. And that feedback may just be keep going, right? So far, this is really great, really develop that particular story or that element. Or maybe they have some ideas they can help you add or ways to change what you've got. So there's a couple ways to do this. So here in a second, I'm going to put you in some breakout rooms. They'll be small, right? Because I want you to be able to really dive into one paper at a time as you're going and really get some good feedback. And so your options for sharing, okay, once you get in your breakout room, you and your partner can you can share a link if you need to put it in the chat. You can share a link to your paper so that they can pull it up on their screen. Or I just enabled on my end, or I think I did anyway, just enabled where you can do some screen sharing. And so you can share your screen with your partner and be like, here's what I've got. And then when they're ready for you to scroll down, you can scroll down. It doesn't matter to me how you share, but it is important that your partner can see and read for themselves as they're going through your particular paper to give you some feedback. Okay. So I'm going to put you in some smaller breakout rooms. You're going to have to be vulnerable. Okay. Going to have to share. Here's what I've got. Here's where I think I'm going. Or maybe you have a completed rough draft already. I don't know. But again, it has to be 4 full pages. That's all the way down to the very, very bottom of the fourth page. But more important than that, we have to tell the story, right? So what is your particular literacy story that you're telling? What are you focusing on? Are you focusing on a book fair? Are you focusing on one particular teacher or one particular class or one particular book? And how are you really diving in and telling that particular story? And how are you showing and not telling through the details and descriptions that you're using? Okay. So here in just a second, you're going to get an invite to a breakout room. Again, you can share your screen, you can get a shareable link, whatever you need to do to be able to share what you have written. Okay, so let me get the breakout room set up momentarily. Okay, if you would kindly go ahead and join a breakout room and begin sharing what you've written. Nobody's going to judge you. Share away. Okay.
unfamiliar with the slang I use might misinterpret my tone or intent, and that's a risk that I don't.
Okay, how's it going in this group? Were you able to get your essays shared?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to share our screens or send
Okay,
a link to each other.
okay, perfect. I was gonna say, or you can just share the screen. That's what I was gonna say. That's what most of the groups are doing, but whatever's easiest. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, everything going okay in this group?
I sent my essay in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
I'm still waiting for him to send his.
okay, no problem, no problem. And I said, if it's easier to share your screen, you can always do that too.
Okay.
So, like,
Hello.
I wonder if it might help if you put more like present tense emotions and like
Yeah.
Basically. So I think that that'll be a nice little touch. I thought that was cool that she said we
We're done now. We both shared.
Okay, perfect. I say we're still waiting on a couple groups here, and then I'll bring us all back together.
Sounds good.
All right, my friends, I think we've got everyone back now. I was trying to give everybody enough time. There were a couple groups that were still going strong, so I think I might have cut you a little bit short, so my apologies. But then we had some other groups that had been done for a little while, so was trying to carefully navigate that. So without further ado, I'm hoping that you got some good feedback. I think it's always important to get other eyes on your rough draft, kind of give you direction of where to go from here. I'm hoping you have some good ideas about where you want to go back and add some more detail and description. We call that showing and not telling when we're writing. I'm hoping that you're considering going back and seeing if there are places where you can add in some dialogue, or maybe as you continue writing, maybe there are some places where you can add some dialogue as you are going, okay? I want to share my screen here, and I don't know why I have that popped up, my apologies. Okay, so for the rest of our time together this evening, let me scroll down to today's date, that would help. All right, so what I've done here is I've tried to build in at least an hour, and it looks like we're gonna have at least an hour. We have an hour and 15, so that's good. I tried to build in a solid hour here of time for you to simply work on writing. Some designated time carved out for you to finish your rough draft of your literacy narrative. Again, wanting you to think about places where you can show, not tell. Okay, so going back, adding in that vivid detailed description, thinking about places you can add in dialogue, thinking about what exactly is your thesis statement, what's going to be that one sentence that kind of, the cliffhanger into the rest of the action. And so I'm just going to give you time to write and to really focus in, or as the young ones say, lock in, right? And so I want you to finish the rough draft of your literacy narrative. Then here's what you're going to do before I see you again next week. I strongly, strongly encourage you with this particular paper, knowing that it's worth so many more points than the other ones, strongly encourage you to utilize our writing lab, okay? I will put that information here in the calendar as well. I do believe it's down at the bottom. Let me check. It still is. Yeah, I can move this to the top, but here's the information for the writing studio. And I do want you to use them. I think they give really good feedback. They are going to ask you for a copy of the scoring guide. So make sure that just give them the link to our scoring guide, which is on today's date right here. Okay, scoring guide. What am I doing? Where's today's date? Oh, I messed this all up. Got to go back up. Here's the scoring guide for today's date on the 16th. And there's the instructions for the writing lab. So I want you to utilize the rest of our class time tonight to complete your rough draft. Then you're going to either email your rough draft to the writing lab, you're going to get on a Zoom call with them, or you're going to drop in person and get some feedback on your paper. After you get that feedback, then I want you to make any final revisions, polish, and you're going to submit a final draft by 11:59 p.m. Sunday, September 21st, okay? So please utilize the next hour and 15 minutes of our designated class time to finish your rough draft. That way tomorrow or Thursday or Friday, you can get into the writing lab, get that feedback, make any final revisions, and then submit by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Okay, so what I'm saying is you are free to go. If you want to stay on, if you have questions or concerns or just need to chat with me, feel free to stay on. Otherwise, have a fantastic night. Focus in, try to get your rough draft completed tonight. That way it'll give you plenty of time to check in with the writing lab, okay? So again, my friends, stay on if you have questions. Otherwise, have a fantastic evening. I look forward to reading your essays when those get submitted, okay?
I have a question. So do we have to go to the writing lab, like do the writing lab? Is that required?
It's not required. I strongly encourage you to. It's not required. I do think it helps though. I do.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I was just wondering, so after like our group discussion, we were talking about is our paper supposed to be like written like you're talking to someone, like an essay, or like a story, like it's like out of a book, like if you were to see in a book?
A story like a book.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Very good.
I also had a question.
Go
I
ahead.
was wondering if it runs over 2 pages, do you want us to try to chop it down?
No, so you need 4 pages total.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so keep going. Try not to
Oh.
have more than 5, but if you do, I'm gonna read it.
Okay. Okay. I don't know where I got 2 from then. Thank you.
Uh-huh. The phone is going off, sorry.
I believe you got 2 from because we were supposed to have 2 by today.
Right. That's, yep.
Oh, okay. So the rough draft, when we submit the rough draft on Sunday, it should be 4 pages?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Have
Uh-huh.
a good night.
You too.
Oh, also, do you want us to submit this rough draft now in the thing?
No, nope.
Okay.
Good question.
I did want to let you know that I did submit mine because, again, I'm going out of town this Friday, but it was after like 15 hours in the writing lab.
Okay, but you did submit?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Love it.
Yeah, because I wanted to make sure because it looks like we might be leaving earlier than expected. So.
Okay, awesome. So yours is already in there for me to grade. I love it. Very good.
Oh yeah, I have 2 tests this week, so I was like, okay, I've got to get this paper done before Tuesday.
I love it.
So I
Good
actually
work.
I stayed till 6 p.m. for the past 3 days.
Oh my gosh. Good for you though. Yes, that's awesome.
They actually let me know that I won an award for the semester.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I love that.
I've been going there every day till between 4 and 6 p.m.
Well, that's
like
awesome.
from 12:30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you though.
I mean, I utilize it a lot. I've gotten 3 stickers because after you go 4 times for over 3 hours, you get stickers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Good for you. I'm so proud of you. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm apparently in the running for like a contest they run that if I'm in the top 3, then I get swag from my school.
Yes. That's amazing.
But yeah. I just wanted to let you know that it's submitted. Let me
Okay.
know if I need to fix anything because
Okay, will do.
there might be a couple things because obviously people have different perspectives on all sorts of things.
Yep. That's perfect. I'm glad it's there.
Yes. All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I had a question about the reader response number 2 on one of the comments you made. It was like fragmentation or fragment.
Uh-huh.
What does that mean, and how do I like? Is that bad or like how like what?
So what that means is that you in the sentence, it's not a complete sentence, meaning it doesn't have a
Okay.
complete thought or it doesn't have a subject, verb, and a direct object. So
Oh, okay.
usually I mark those. So, okay, sometimes stylistically writers will use fragments to like get attention. They'll use like
Uh-huh.
one word and a period or just a few words and a period to get attention. But in the body of a paper, typically when we don't have a complete idea or we don't have that subject, verb, direct object, typically it's a grammatical mistake. So that's probably why I marked it.
Okay, that makes sense. I was like, that doesn't sound good. And then I reread the sentence and I was like, that kind of doesn't make sense. So maybe that's what it means.
Yep, that's what it means. Yep.
And then so for my narrative that's due on Sunday, I like don't have a specific story, like one
Okay.
story that can capture how I feel about reading and how I am with that. So can it be multiple stories but still in the same timeline?
Yes.
Okay.
If that works better for you and in order to meet the page requirement, totally fine if you have to do it that way.
Okay. And we're allowed to like have negative experiences,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Like, okay.
Oh my gosh, most of the people I work with have negative experiences.
I didn't want you to be like, oh yes, this one loves reading too, and this one because I
no.
really do not. I can't comprehend for the life of me. I was like,
I've read a lot of papers that roast teachers, professors, you name it. I've seen it all.
Oh, I won't be doing that. It's roasting myself for not being able to comprehend.
Oh no, you're all good. Totally fine.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.
So I have a question. So can I walk in and sit with them and like review my literacy narrative, or I have to submit or drop that?
Okay, so you've got several options. You can walk into their office and they'll sit down and help you.
Okay.
It's probably the best method. The other methods, you can hop on a Zoom call, kind of like we're doing right now,
Okay.
or you can email them. But the best, I always think the best option is to sit down one-on-one and
Okay.
have them go through it with you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's all
Uh-huh.
because
Okay.
you didn't mention, so like we can go sit one-on-one. So that's
Mhm.
right. Right now it's me. All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh, you're welcome.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.